Hi folks, welcome back to Through a Scottish Prism. This is the midweek special off our normal politics only show. I recently read a copy of Scott Forge's book, A Long Walk to Justice. It's the story of the brutal murder in 2003 of Jodie Jones and the subsequent arrest, conviction and imprisonment of 14-year-old Luke Mitchell. It is a complicated story, a brutal murder, and there are cries of miscarriage of justice. Listen to the interview, read the book, and see if you agree with the conclusions of Scott and many others that a grave miscarriage of justice has been put on Luke Mitchell. And here I am, joined by Scott Forbes today to discuss the case of Luke Mitchell and the long walk to justice. Scott, thanks for being here today, my friend.
Thank you for having me, Rod.
Oh, it's a pleasure. I've read the book. I've followed. I remember vaguely the case. I've got to say, I would like to take it step by step, if we may, because this could be one of the biggest miscarriages of justice ever in Scottish history.
I believe it. I believe it to be so.
I know you do, and I would like to make sure that we get this absolutely right. So, just to give some background to yourself, if we may, for the viewers, Scott, you're an investigator lawyer now.
Yes.
You qualified back in 2000? You qualified as a lawyer.
2010.
2010.
2010.
And it was the same year that Luke Mitchell asked you to become his lawyer.
Yes. Listen, I was involved in Luke Mitchell's case from day one, really.
Yeah.
Because I took a boy to a police station the day after the murder too. I took Mark Kane to a police station. Just listen, nobody ever says Mark Kane killed anybody. But he should have been a person of interest.
I was going to come to that. But
so anyway, that kept me in the case. 2006, 2007, I accessed the paperwork, the case files. And while I was studying law, I was studying Luke Mitchell's case with the help of some tutors at Stirling University. The late Bill Stewart, I must give a mention of a magnificent man, brilliant. He wrote books on dialect and criminal law. And I remember saying to him, "Look, Bill, I've got this case," and he told me where to look. First thing, Scott, go and see what the judge has to say. The judge's charge, read that first and then work your way back. And then in 2010, when I graduated, Luke became my first client.
Good. But can I go back? Can I go back to 2003, the day of June? Now you're from Midlothian yourself, so you're familiar with this, the geography and the culture and some of the shall we say participants are in this.
Yes.
If we go back to the 30th of June 2003, this wee lassie Jodie Jones, she leaves her home. It was just before 5 o'clock, 4:30, 5 o'clock, to take this shortcut, a well-trodden path, I should say.
Oh, very well trodden.
Yeah, to go and see her boyfriend.
Mm-hmm.
She never turns up. Now, the first question I was going to ask, if she's going to meet her boyfriend, Scott, why, if he's expecting her to come, why hasn't he sort of set up the alarm bells earlier? Because it wasn't until about 10, 11 o'clock at night that the actual alarm bells went up. So why didn't Luke sort of, about 6 o'clock, so I don't know, when she hadn't turned up, why didn't he try and find out where she was?
Well, that's puzzled me also, because it's his girlfriend. And the only reason or the only explanation I can give is they weren't definitely meeting because she was grounded and she wasn't grounded. She was getting out to place. Nobody knows if she'd been at school that afternoon. Was she getting punished for skipping school? So nobody really knows Jodie's whereabouts really for that whole day, apart from being in her house at 5. But when Luke calls the house, he gets told they have left. They, not she, but they have left. So Luke Mitchell sat waited. They, yes. And as it transpired later on, Jodie left her home with her brother. People call him the stocky man. Jodie left the house with her brother. So Luke phones Jodie's house, I think, just at 6 and asks where are they, and he got told that just after 5, before 5, and he got told they have just left. Now, at 6 o'clock, 40 minutes later, there's a positive identification of Luke sitting at the end of the street waiting on Jodie Cullen. Thereafter, he went and played with his pals in the park.
And is that was that identification accepted by the prosecution?
Yes.
So
it was
so
people who knew him. Yes. Well, see if when the police say, when they say Jodie left her house to where they see Luke Mitchell, I think he had 45 minutes, 50 minutes all in to walk the distance, which took the jury, I think, 25, 30 minutes.
Could we come to? So can I take it a bit back at time? So by about 11 o'clock at night, and if I've got my times or anything wrong, please interrupt me, Scott. By about 11 o'clock, there is apparently her grandmother is anxious that she's not about, and she gets in touch with Luke and other people to say, "Have you seen Jodie?" Is that right?
Yes, well, the mother phoned. The grandmother, Agnes Walker, she's now dead, deceased, the late Agnes. She knew where to go that night. Now, this is always puzzling me.
I'm going to come to that. Yeah, but she was the one that was looking for him, and he said when they reported she was missing, Luke volunteered to come and help find her as well.
Yes.
And he brought his dog.
Yes.
Which it transpires the dog Mia, and correct me again on anything if I get it wrong, please, Scott.
No, Mia
was trained by a regimental sergeant major from the Army Veterinary Corps. Is that right?
Yes, job right. Yes.
To find humans.
Yes. And he was very
specific. Specific humans, not anything else, not animals, but to find humans.
Humans.
Now, Alsatians are particularly good at that, I believe.
Well, this man told me different levels in. I've got a dog. He's lying here now. He picked them for puppies. The most intelligent for humans and explosives. The less intelligent for protection, and the least intelligent for guarding the fence. They run the perimeter fence and they bite anything, right? But they're not the most clever. The one Mia, he called Mia exceptional. Now, she was only 18 months.
He took Mia himself, and I should add that both these kids were 14 years of age. And he was at Goth. Now, I'm sure you all know what a Goth is. And he set off with his dog, a torch, and he rendezvoused with the grandmother, the sister. If I missed someone, there was the sister and the grandmother. There was someone else.
Stephen Kelly, the
boyfriend, the sister's fiance boyfriend. Yeah. So the three, and they go taking the route that Jodie would have taken, and they go up and they go up through the lane past the famous V in the wall.
Yes.
And they don't see her, and they go back down again. And the granny says to Luke, "Let's go back up and double check." Is that right?
Yes. The grandmother had walked from a place called Mayfield, 3 miles away. When she leaves her house, she walks past a man called John Ferris and their daughter, stepdaughter Yvonne Walker. They're at the flat waving at their granny, going out looking for their cousin, and they never thought to join the search party. Now, that in itself always puzzled me, because John Ferris on the night says he had to go home early because his granny, Alice Walker, goes to bed early. So the granny who goes to bed early is now on the streets at 11 o'clock at night, and the grandson who has to go home early for his granny going to bed early sees her going out searching, and he didn't think anything of it. Now, that always puzzled me.
But I agree.
Very much. Yeah. Also, I'd like to add that Joseph Jones, Alan Owens, and other male members of the Jones family were 300 yards away from where the granny had walked 3 miles to. Why did they males not go looking? And, anyway, she walks to a place called Mayfield, and she meets Luke Mitchell at Lady Dyke's Path and Rowan Dyke's Path. There's a crossroads of paths, and there's a crossroads where the jury stood, and they meet Luke there, and she insists to go back down where Luke had just walked up.
Yeah, now, she says, let's double check.
Yes.
That's what she said.
Yes.
And later, when she was asked why she did that, she just got a feeling.
She just did. Asked in the High Court by Donald Finlay, how did you know to go directly to Rowan Dyke's path. I just did. He asked her again under cross. I just did. And that was just accepted.
So they go to this V shape in the wall, which is quite high and inaccessible to certain people. And Luke says to his dog, Mia, find Jodie.
Yes.
And the dog gets up on its hind legs, am I right?
Sniffing
on the wall,
yes.
sniffing the air.
Yes.
At which point Luke climbs the wall and finds poor Jodie dead.
Yes.
But she wasn't, just so our viewers understand, she was brutally murdered.
Beaten, strangled. And then after the strangulation, someone took I would perceive to be a large bladed weapon and mutilated her, virtually decapitated her. There's injuries to the eyes, but real bad slashes on her face, under her breast, over her stomach and abdomen, just a mutilation.
Yeah. So we'll come back to that. So it's obviously, the place must be a bloodbath.
Yeah. It wasn't. Listen,
it wasn't. Exactly.
No.
We'll come back to that. So they call the police, and the police arrive. Now here's another. Now I'm not a criminologist. I'm not a lawyer, but I think, like most people watching this program, I've seen enough cop shows on both sides of the Atlantic to know the most important thing to do is to secure the crime scene. Am I right?
Yes.
And those at the site. So, meantime, while the police are arriving, the granny has climbed the wall or get in there, get access, and she's been cradling her granddaughter in her arms.
Yes.
Was there anyone else there?
Yes. Stephen Kelly, the boyfriend, he went over the wall. Then they come back over, and he's then cuddling his girlfriend Janine. So you can imagine, if you watch Morse or whatever, transference, if I'm covered in blood and I cuddle you, then the transference for me, you. So the whole search party were potentially carrying
DNA and evidence
DNA,
and
blood,
forensics.
and yes.
Yep. Okay. So we'll come to of course, the police should secure all that. So when the police do arrive, look, a 14-year-old boy, please everyone understand this, a 14-year-old child, if you've got a 14-year-old child of your own, or you remember your 14-year-old child, or your grandchild, this is a 14-year-old child. He's just found his girlfriend brutally murdered and mutilated. And he's sitting, comforting himself, maybe with his dog, patting his dog, sitting by where the police arrive. And it seems from that point, the police thought his demeanour was strange, did they not?
See, the first two police on the scene, they come from a direction that David Dickey had taken earlier, directly across a ploughed field from a street called Reed Drive. Police automatically, when they heard the child was missing, for whatever reason, they've got protocols in place that some police will confirm.
Yeah.
When a child goes missing, they go to that directly to certain addresses. They went directly to Reed Drive and they came. The first police officers on the site asked Luke Mitchell, what's over there? And he went, it's down there. And the policeman described him as ashen face, looked terrified, very anxious as a 14-year-old boy. I've seen his photos, Roddy, and I'm not a shy man. I've seen many murder scenes and photographs. These were horrific. Real, please listen, they live for you. They're very serious. This isn't a stab wound or a shoot. This is mutilation of a young girl. So the policeman described them as upset. 20 minutes later, they're in a car park up at a school. And everybody knew to Jodie's family to go to the school. No, there's a dozen woodlands here. Where they stay, the place is surrounded with woodland. But everybody knew exactly what woodland and what path to go to. That was never ever discussed or investigated. But while they're there, the Jones family, the search party, they're all cuddling each other, expected. Talking. Luke's sitting over here, he's clapping his dog, he's telling his mother on the phone, stop fucking phoning me. And the policeman looks over. Now the policeman looks over, he looks quite weird, a bit strange. They've been fed the information that he left Jodie's home at 5 o'clock with Jodie, which was all wrong, and that he's the only person that found the body. So they've just made him suspect. They took him back to Dalkey police station and they gave him what they call the full works. Now, ECW ordered it, get him into the station, they strip him All his clothes were bagged.
DC Dolby was the lead investigator in this.
Yes,
now, am I not right in saying, Scott, that in any murder, the first person to discount when the police arrive is if it's the wife that's dead, the husband's the first suspect, and then the rest of the family, and then they broaden the investigation. Is that not the normal?
They certainly, and Mr. Dobie boasted, you must keep do the simple things. No simple thing was done here. Do you know how bad it was, Ron? They take the search party back to a police station. Now, Alice Walker's cradled the body, she's cuddled Janine. Stephen Walker's went over the wall, he's cuddled Janine. So every one of them should have been taken, clothes taken, residue, nails, hair, everything, and given white suits. Instead, while they were sitting in the police station, they were, look, a 14-year-old boy, no parent, no lawyer, nothing, in the back room, stripping him, searching him. His hair was unwashed, the residue, his nails was dirty. That's a significant fact. His wrists were dirty and his ankles were dirty. So he had made no effort to wash.
Could I just say his hair was also unwashed, I believe?
Yes. His hair was unwashed, his fingernails were dirty.
He's not been in the shower?
Oh, no, never had a wash. He'll cuss me for calling him dirty. Lazy wee shite. He's not washed, his nails are dirty. His hair was dirty. His wrists and his ankles were dirty. So, in his clothes. And he's not got in the photograph of his naked body. There's not a scratch. There's not a bruise. Jodie was in a fight for her life.
Correct.
Nothing. Yeah. But while he's getting what the full works, the police decide to take Alice Walker on a detour to Dalkeith for cups of tea. They're taking her to other people's houses. So Alice Walker now covered in DNA, blood, whatever, sitting in a police station. So instead of they're taking her back to Jodie and Jodie's house. So she's now sitting there with Janine and Stephen Kelly. So the whole crime scene has now went to the crime scene to the police station.
So Janine is the sister. Janine's the sister.
Yes. Her boyfriend Stephen Kelly. They've all been shipped to different houses.
And they're allowed to spread this forensic evidence everywhere. But can I go back to the area where Jodie was found? Now this is a notorious area in the local area for people, drinking, doing drugs and God knows what else. There's even a gang up there, is there not?
There's half a dozen gang huts. See, I think it's 900 metres, if I remember correctly. 900 metres be 25 metres of woodland strip. Inside that woodland strip, there's campfires by the dozen. There's where people have carved out wee gang huts to sit and drink and smoke. People are hanging pit bull terriers for trees with a spring pole to make their dogs fit. There's men go burying greyhounds here. It's a local place where everything bad can happen.
Yeah, and it's also it's an area where there's an awful lot of poachers and hunters and whatnot.
Yes,
am I right?
Yes.
So we're moving on here. Poor wee Jodie's been found. They've sent for the pathologist. They've roped the area, or not roped, to take the area off. But then, did they not do something strange when the photographer arrived to take photographs? Something that is not normal at a murder scene. They started breaking off branches, sawing off branches.
Roddy, what they've done to that crime scene is generally criminal. Now, as a lawyer, I study some bits, not all the handwriting stuff, forensic, secure, how you can secure a site. Well, you tape it and you put a tent over it and you secure it. I learned basics. I'm not a genius or an ex. I know when you secure a site, you cover it, you put a tent over the body and keep people away. This photographer went in, they started cutting branches away and ivy away to get better light to take photographs. Now, the only evidence in this case that I've seen that's untampered with, I use that word, is the photographs. The photographs of the crime scene, because after I'm laughing at how silly the whole thing is. After she takes photographs, she messed up the whole scene. They put Jodie onto a polythene sheet. This is incredible when you think of this. Put Jodie's roller onto a polythene sheet and they drag her across a crime scene, 10 metres of a crime scene, and they leave her lying in plastic overnight in the rain. Now,
because the reason, am I right in saying the reason they've left her overnight is the pathologist arrived, but with no harm to the lady. She was a rather rotund lady, I think, and she couldn't go over the wall. And rather than take a wee walk round, she went home. And
Yes.
poor wee Jodie, mutilated, murdered, a 14-year-old child, as you say, is left out in the elements overnight for 5 hours till another pathologist arrives.
Yes.
Now,
Yes.
again, I'm asking you because I'm an amateur, and so is probably most people watching this. How much usable evidence could be destroyed in that time?
Well, it's inconceivable. In addition to being left out all night, it's a woodland strip, it's country, there's foxes and badgers and rodents. And she's open to attack for all these things. In addition, the polythene sheet is under her. Now, in my younger days, I'm a carpenter to trade. And if I use a polythene sheet, it's to cover stuff to stop the rain getting in. This is the opposite way. Jodie's lying on a polythene sheet. So all night, this polythene sheet is building up in puddles, and Jodie's lying in a puddle because they've created this puddle. In the morning, do you know what they do? It gets even worse. In the morning, when they come, they don't even take the polythene sheet in for forensic examination. They just roll Jodie off the sheet, put her in their body bag, take it away, and the polythene sheet's just disregarded.
But there's already so many mistakes here.
Oh, listen, the list.
I would have thought, and especially with someone like Donald Finlay, we could have been at no trial by now. So let's go back to Luke, if I can, for a minute. Was he ever in trouble with the law?
No, none. No,
he was a middle-class family, a nice house.
Basically, a nice mid-terrace family home. When I met them in 2006, a mid-terrace family home, dogs, cats, hedgehogs in the garage. The mum, I'll say it, the mum's in hospital, I believe, right now, Corey. I really feel for her. But she was a bit batty, scatty, and yet I could never figure, was she always like that, or did this case?
Yeah, well,
the pressure's right. 24/7, the media at the door. But I genuinely found a nice, basic, middle-class family.
Am I right in saying that there was over 300 stab wounds on Jodie?
I think 300 wounds. Stab wounds would be the wrong. Wounds, yeah.
Okay, 300 wounds. Well, okay. I mean, that's... So, to go back to that, because once we've done that, the crime scene, did no one think, as you said, there was no blood there, was there?
Oh, very, very little. Well, you see if... I'm going by memory here. Jodie's lying here. Go on, sorry.
Reading your book.
No,
reading your book. It's assumed that she lost up to six. Was it 6 litres or 6 pints?
Litres, yeah,
6 pints of blood.
6 litres.
I always thought it was. I didn't know you had that many in it. But anyway, 6 litres of blood.
Listen, I might have that wrong, but that's the report we're going.
That should be a lot of blood. I mean, there must have been blood everywhere, and yet there was none.
None.
Did the police not think that's suspicious?
No, they never examined nothing.
How did the police, if you like, push that aside but say, well, that's not important? What did they think it seeped into the ground or what?
Well, listen, there was no blood found in the ground. The crime scene photographs show you the ground. There's no scrape marks. There's no upsetting of the leaves. Now, this was all taken before the polythene sheet was pulled over. The photographs of the ground were taken before all this, undisturbed. There's no blood. There's no signs of a struggle. There's trickles of blood, spots of blood, approximately 3 metres away from where Jodie was lying, and it's 500 millimetres off the ground. There's spots along the wall. But genuinely, and I genuinely mean this isn't an exaggeration, I've had bigger nosebleeds in sparring than what I found at the murder scene of Jodie Jones.
Yeah. But so with 300 wounds,
yes,
you would expect, and I believe her left or right arm was nearly severed with one of the. There's a lot of blood's going to come out of that, and there's.
Professor Basuto says the wound was so bad that it would have weakened her whole demeanour, for the blood. And it's a machete wound, for want of a better word. It looks like a defensive wound that's her here, and it nearly takes her arm off, nearly cuts her arm off. It's two-thirds of the way through her arm, and so there was no blood for that. Her trousers were soaked. Her bra. One of the horrible things was her bra, no blood. A tiny speck on a strap. It was immaculate. It's white. The training shoes never had any blood. So she must have been, well, logic tells you after she was stripped. But there's no blood. There is nothing. But listen, from a crime scene, like I'm trying to describe the best I can without being disrespectful to Jodie, there's a wee girl lying, she's mutilated, she's stripped. The only thing, somebody put her socks back on. Jodie had wee blue ankle socks. And as she's been getting dragged along the floor, the socks have come off with her training shoes. And there's mud on the outside of the socks. But whoever put the socks back on, put the socks on back inside out. So the mud's on the inside. So somebody went consciously and put socks back on Jodie. For what reason, nobody ever found out. Now, you've got a wee girl there, her hands are tied behind her back, virtually decapitated, serious wounds all over her torso and her face. Oh, one of them is. And there's no blood. There's no signs of a struggle. Nothing. There's nothing.
Did the police take soil samples looking for blood?
No soil samples. No, nothing.
But shouldn't they have taken soil samples?
They should have found it. They should have found the blood. Only my opinion. I've written in my opinion, put my name here. Jodie Jones was not killed where she was found. My opinion is Jodie was carried here after death.
Yeah, I would like to come to that.
Of course, yes.
I'd like to come to, so they found there's no blood. They've trampled all over. They've cut down leaves. They've left the wee girl out all night. They've wrapped her, dragged her across the place. But then some bizarre things happened after that, did they not? And we'll introduce some other characters because, there are a lot of people who are worthy of at least an interview. Suspects is maybe too strong a word, but there are certain people that should have been questioned that were not questioned. And one of them was a guy with, was it 9 Cocker Spaniels, a Mr. Dickey.
Oh, yes, listen, he's
so the day after he was taken to the site, or no, it was the day before her body was. I'm mixed up my days here.
Yes.
When was she taken there?
His kid, Gordon Dickey, and Don Ferris were at the V at the wall at the exact time Jodie was getting killed. We'll come back to him. They leave that scene and they go away in a moped, and 10 minutes, 15 minutes after they leave, Gordon Dickey walks directly across a ploughed field, not across paths or anything, across directly to the V in the wall. Why did he go directly? There's a dozen V's in that wall that's used to climb over it. He went directly to where this V, with his 9 spaniel dogs. He says all dogs jumped over, but one was too old, so he had to carry her over the V in the wall. And when he was there, he never seen anything, and none of his dogs indicated. Now, this was at 6 o'clock at night, approximately. This is 45 minutes after Jodie's been murdered in a fight. And he says not one of his dogs indicated that. Oh, there are no dogs. I grew up with spaniel dogs, Labrador dogs. And
am I right to say spaniels have got a very acute sense of smell?
Listen, these dogs are working dogs. They're not pet dogs lying on your settee. These dogs are up in the Lammermuir Hills with police doing shoots. They know how to find a dead bird in the middle of a field. 19 metres away, there's a wee girl lying, all clothes, blood, mutilation, everything. And these 9 spaniels go, and they didn't go anywhere near it.
The cynic would say yes,
that
this was Mr. Dickey setting up an alibi for his son.
Yes, he was going over to protect the site, in my opinion. Now, what makes this real bad, real terrible? Criminally negligent. The police, David Dickey is a police asset, for a better word. He takes the police on the Lammermuir Hills, he goes shooting together. Like most gamekeepers have got relationships. The police, it's common within that background. David Dickey takes police away shooting on the Lammermuir Hills. He's very familiar with Dalkeith police. He keeps them in the know about the local drugs and whatever. But he's a policeman's friend, shall we say. The police go back to him 2 days later. Now, they know he's been at the scene. They're looking for 2 boys on a moped that one happens to be his son. And instead of treating them as suspects, they take David Dickey back to the murder scene. I think 2 days after it, 3 days after it, with his 9 spaniel dogs to ask him his expert opinion about how they would escape. And then he starts talking about There's footprints here leading towards Luke Mitchell's house, and the police are listening to this. Now, they took a local police asset, friend, whatever, as an expert witness, who should have been a serious suspect in this case. It's certainly a person of interest, but they treated him as an expert witness rather than a suspect. And then it wasn't until, I think, the 14th of August, 14th, they bring up dogs from Yorkshire. A Yorkshire dog team. And I think it was the same, I may be wrong here, but I think it is the same team who took the dogs over to Portugal for Madeleine McCann. The same working, no the dogs, the same team, no the workers, the police officers. Now, they couldn't find nothing. They told you that their inquiries were hampered by a bleach-like substance. Now, that puzzled me for a long time. Puzzled other people, forensic scientists. Why would somebody pour bleach over a murder scene? And if the police had it protected, how could someone get to that scene and do this with bleach? We never paid too much attention to that, but although it puzzled people, we just left it. Years and years into the case, I spoke to someone one time, and they described what they called a protected site. I says, explain this to me. And when they kill deer or foxes or whatever, they butcher it quickly, they drain the blood, they take the entrails away, and they dig a hole and they bury it. And see where they bury it, they pour ammonia or a bleach-like substance around the pit. Now, it depends how big the circle you want to be. You can make a big circle, a small circle, but that's a protected site. Because when a gamekeeper comes along with a dog, the dog smells the ground, remember, the Alsatians are no smelling here, they're dogs, they're hounds, they're smelling the ground when they hit that bleach. They get punched, they call it nose blindness. The dogs go nose blind and they no longer follow that trail. It's well known within the foxes. Gamekeepers use it to set up false trails. People use it to keep foxes out your garden. That's why I've never heard of this. You can buy a fox repellent, a bleach-like substance, and you pour it at the bottom of your garden, so when the foxes come here, you got a smell of this in the back off. A protected site. And this man told me these words, protected site. I was, what? And I kept quizzing him. And the mayor was quizzing the mayor, the mayor was answering questions. My eyes were like, what? This, where Jodie was found was what poachers would call a protected site. Somebody had... yes, yes.
It would have to be someone that was into poaching, etc. Yeah, or hunting.
100%.
And am I right in saying a lot of the Jodie's family and people in that circle were into poaching?
No. We were speaking this last night, Sandalee and myself. 4 people that day were known to be in that field. Right, you've got Jodie, somebody following her, and you've got 2 men on mopeds parked at the V in the wall when Jodie was getting murdered. And every one of them are poachers, game poachers, hunters, killers, some more cruel than others. Listen, I know the sports. Just to listen to some people will shoot a deer and then got it, whatever, and they take it home in the village, and every dog in the village eats venison for weeks. Like one for the pot. There's also really bad people in this. They shoot the deer in the hind leg and make it limp, and then they set dogs on it. There's other people who just kill for the sake of killing, and they mutilate the deer. Now, within these 4 men, 3 men and a girl, 3 of the men have all got history of every one of these things.
Yeah.
Violence to animals, torture to animals, mutilation of animals, some killed just for the sake of killing.
So the other thing was these boys that were on the moped and there were like, because there wasn't a definite time by the pathologist, or they didn't actually know that what time for definite that she died, did they?
Oh, listen, everything in this case is just guesswork. They made it up to fit a narrative that Luke Mitchell killed Jodie Jones. Now, the boys were seen at the V, independent witnesses, I think just after 5, 2 minutes past 5, something like that. And they left the scene at 20 past 5. Now, so they're there, according to the police, when Jodie's been murdered, but they can't remember where they were, what they had seen, and they can't remember speaking to anybody.
But if someone was getting 300 wounds, Scott, and you were, how far away were they? 20 metres, 30 metres?
Where she was found, 19 metres.
19 metres, 300 wounds, and you didn't hear anything. You didn't.
They never heard nothing. They never seen the fun. And one of them, by the way, Jodie's the cousin of one of them, and the other one is friendly with the brother, not the best friends with Jodie's brother. So you've got people who are really close to Jodie, two men that are very close to Jodie Jones, both get serious questions asked them about sexual advances towards Jodie, as did David, the father. And they're at the scene. Where she's found is 90 metres away from where their moped's parked. Now, where their moped is parked only leaves you really one place you can go is over the V, or you've got open field. So they went over the V, 90 metres away from where she's found. They never seen nothing. They didn't see anybody, and they can't remember who they were speaking to. They stayed away for 5 days. The police made several appeals for the men in the moped. Please come forward. We need to speak to you. Blah blah blah. And Alice Walker, Jodie Jones's grandmother, told her grandson Ferris not to go forward. Don't you dare go forward to the police. Sure. When he did tell the police, Alice told me not to come forward, Joseph Jones threatened to stab him, and they had to leave the Dalkeith area and move 60 miles away. Never investigated by the police, nothing.
So the victim's grandmother told two key witnesses not to come forward.
Yes.
And still our police force were not thinking anything suspicious was going on here.
Nothing.
But there's other two things I'd like to show. When they stripped young Luke at the station and gave him the full works, 14-year-old child, folks, don't forget that. Yes. They gave him the full works. They took all sorts of forensic stuff off him because 300. I go back to this 300 wounds. He must have been splattered with DNA. So when the results come back from the DNA, how much of Jodie's DNA did they find on him?
Nothing.
Exactly.
Nothing. I must tell you, there's a journalist, she falls out with me, a journalist, a reporter, falls out with me because he keep telling these lies that they found a DNA profile on Jodie's bra. That's just lies, Roddy. They found a mixed profile. Now, the mixed DNA that was found on Jodie's bra, if I remember correctly, I think it was 6 human beings could have been part of it. But they couldn't rule out Luke. They couldn't rule out her brother. They couldn't rule out the two guys on the moped. They couldn't rule out the DC Dobie. They couldn't rule out anyone. But they
because they had ruined the crime scene. It's
a mixed profile. A mixed profile in DNA now. It means it's nobody. It could be 10 years all cuddled together and somebody's touched something. It's a mix. So it meant nothing.
But here's two other things I'd like to ask you about, Scott. In that 5 days while those two guys with the moped went missing, they got rid of the moped. They scrapped it.
Yes.
Again, the police didn't think, well, that sounds suspicious.
No.
But the two things that get me, and I need them explained to me, Scott. They found a condom a few meters away from the body.
Yes.
Now, that was, it was found at the time her body was found, am I right?
Yes, on the same night.
Yep, on the same night that her body was found with 300 wounds, they found a condom and they got a sperm sample from it.
Yes. Fresh semen.
Fresh semen. And it wasn't...
Fresh semen. No.
It was in fact...
James Faulkner.
James Faulkner.
James Faulkner was a man who lived in Reed Drive beside the two Dickies and where the police come from that night. They never even... The police were in his house the day after because one of the sweatshirts were found on the path belonged to his brother. Now, he's got a twin. So his twin brother's T-shirt was found on the path, but they never tested it because they think it had been in the undergrowth for a couple of days, so it was irrelevant to the inquiries, which fair enough. The guy Faulkner was not traced. Now, they've got used condom, fully fresh semen, as they called it, at the murder scene, 15 metres away from where Jodie's lying, mutilated, stripped, ankle socks put back on. They never even attempted to trace him. They traced this boy 3 years later when he got charged with some other crime. And they took his DNA and it showed up the DNA database, that eventually they had a match. And they went and questioned him. They never asked him. His excuse for being in the woods that night was he walked half a mile, 3/4 of a mile to go into the woods to have what he called, sorry for swearing, a clean wank. Come on, we're middle-aged men here. Have you ever heard of a man walking 3/4 of a mile with a condom? I'm not laughing, but you have to laugh sometimes or you cry,
putting on a walking 3/4 of a mile, condom in the wood, having a quick fly one.
Yes.
No, and if anyone out there has ever even tell us about it, I would like to hear.
And next day morning, after the body was found, he went back into the same woods and had another one with the same condom. When he gets traced 3 years later, they're not even interested where he was being, who was with, because allegedly he was there with a 15-year-old girl. He was 19, I think, at the time, and he didn't want to say because he's 15, allegedly. Now, that was me and my inquiries. Police made no inquiries. They never even, they made no inquiry against him, even as bad.
But didn't he later say it was a married woman and he didn't want her to be...
you see, he told his workmates when he didn't want to say she was 15 that she was a married woman.
But there's another one. Now, Jodie, wee darling, lived, she had a sister, Janine, who lived 3 miles away from her.
Yes.
And her boyfriend, Stephen Kelly. Now, when they did the forensics on wee Jodie's T-shirt that she was wearing that night, they found a sperm sample on it.
Yes.
That was not Luke. It was Stephen Kelly, her sister's boyfriend.
Yes.
Now, again, the police seem to have ignored that because it seems as if they'd already made up their mind and they weren't letting anything get in the way. But why, when there's this her sister's boyfriend's sperms on her T-shirt, how did they explain that one away?
Well, you know, listen, the police were acting, I would call them like a defence solicitor for Stephen Kelly. Stephen Kelly didn't know, or he didn't know how his sperm got on Jodie's T-shirt. So the police go to him and tell him the explanation, or a reasonable explanation is Jodie must have borrowed her sister's T-shirt. Now, the police told Stephen Kelly this to use that as his excuse. Why the police are telling people interested in a murder case about how to explain away their semen, you know, in a deceased body is very questionable, to say the least. But what happened on the 16th is DC Dobie again, when DC Dobie arrived at the school that night, he was met by a woman called Alice. I'm genuinely couldn't pronounce her surname. Alice is a relation of Jodie's. Now, when she arrived there, DC Dobie's there, the two of them were friends. The two of them worked in the children's panel together, children's safety. Well, they forgot children's safety on the 30th of June 2003, but nevertheless, they work in child safeguarding, child safety through the children's panel. So DC Dobie's met with his friend. His friend Alice is Judith, Jodie's mum and all that, so he's now part of the family. He's got a friend. She then comes on the 16th and repeats DC Dobie's words. What Dobie told Kelly, or Janine must have borrowed the T-shirt. She then tells you on the 16th, Jodie was always borrowing Janine's T-shirts. They lived 3 miles apart. Janine had left home in East Houses at the age of 14, the same age as Jodie, who was also wanting to leave home at that age. That's for other people's examination, if they want it. But Janine Jones stayed 3 miles away from her sister, and they just waved aside sperm, a full DNA profile, the sperm on a deceased T-shirt. They just dismissed. He must have borrowed your sister's T-shirt.
It is quite incredible. But the other thing going on, I'm maybe jumping ahead of myself even here. At one point, maybe to look efficient, the huge expense to the taxpayer. The Lothian and Borders Police went to America, to the FBI. Was it in Florida? The FBI, yes. To do. They are the world leaders on profiling, particularly for very violent murders. And they did a profile, and it didn't fit the narrative, did it?
Oh no. Listen, I've never seen nothing so didactic until I looked at SMP files. Alex Hammond files, didactic. Listen, it's a waste of time. I don't know how much it costs the taxpayer money, but when we've looked at this to try and fund this ourselves. We went to the FBI and asked them if they could give us that report. They can't, because it's a property of Lothian Borders Police and the ethics, and they wanted, I think, $30,000 as a retainer, and I think $5,000 thereafter weekly or whatever it was. So what they paid for this is maybe 30,000. I don't know. I'm taking an estimate guess. And when you read the report, all you see is black felted pens. It's useless. It's dear sirs, dedact. Who killed Jodie Jones? Dedact. Nothing. The FBI have went a stage further. They're now saying that Lothian Borders Police picked the wrong man, singled them out, or they use very, very strong words, and they feel very strongly that they were part of that. Now, the report, I wish I could publish it, or it's a disgrace. It's £30,000 of taxpayer money telling you roughly who killed that wee girl, and the police just ignored it.
Now, as to the murder weapon, the
Mhm.
police
No.
were never able to determine with the forensics people what the actual murder weapon was.
Roddy, it's a joke. Listen, they not just the Daily Record. I'm not picking on the mainstream media fed the myth. A missing penknife, a sheath. Do you know, like a sheath?
Sheath knife, yeah.
Yes, and on the inscription he had words of a song 666 and Jodie's date of birth. And the thing is, where's the missing knife? I'm not exaggerating. Please, when I tell you, it's called a scunting knife. I thought they'd spell it wrong. It's a wee fisherman's knife that you wear in a pouch. And I'm not exaggerating when I tell you, the blade is that size, 40 millimetres, and a wee bit thicker, and it sat in a wee pouch. Right, it was a pen knife. It's an everyday knife. If you look at, the people are entitled to carry it in your pocket. It's not an offensive weapon because it's a certain size and it's not got a lockback on it. And to suggest, and they painted this picture, this missing knife was the murder weapon. Two things: the police had the knife in their custody. It was purchased well after the murder, but the police twisted it into this missing knife. The police had the knife in custody. They took pictures of it. Secondly, when I see the wounds, it's embarrassing. I'm a carpenter at trade. I know sharp tools. I know how to sharpen knives, chisels, planes, and I know what certain things can do. I'm 20, 30 years in criminal justice. I've seen umpteen wounds in machete. The wounds done to Jodie Jones were done by a large knife. No, some super wee pen knife. Whoever and whatever killed Jodie Jones done so with a very large blade, and it had never been found. We did find, we found witnesses, very reliable, I must say. And the reason I say reliable, very articulate. They had nothing to gain or nothing to lose when they were telling me. So I appreciate that. They weren't great lovers of Luke Mitchell, or they think you should draw it in hell and stuff. But they also told me about a knife found in a skip. Now that knife just disappeared. We've looked through the files for it. They spent a forensic team for a whole day emptying a skip looking for the tip of a knife. The man was that good, Roddy. He says to me, because my background, joiners used to have special chisels and marble chisels and certain saws. And this man was the same. He was a mechanic. He said, Scott, I can recognise good quality tools. And what was lying in the skip was a very, very good quality knife. It was that good. He Googled the name of it in 2003, and it come back and it told him the cost was over 100 and whatever pounds. Now, he can't remember the name, but he remembers Googling it to find there was a tip missing. But that knife and tip have just been disappeared. There's no trace yet. Never been examined. The police told one witness that some cheap knife had been used in the garage to take out windows, and because it broke, they just threw it away. A yellow handle thing. The people who seen this knife tell me that's not true. This was a beautiful Bowie knife. They called it a beautiful Bowie knife. Now, the stocky man, he's a rucksack with one of them in it for protection to keep his paranoia, has been described to me several times as a man with a large Bowie knife. A large Bowie knife in a rucksack. Now, the same garages where the knife is found, two men on the moped, David Dickey and Joseph Jones, are all familiar with these garages. They all work there. Joseph worked there at weekends, stock car racing. They've all got friends who work in the garages. They all know each other. So, and this place is, you can drive up and down the main road. You would never see it. You have to know where Home Farm Garages is to find it. And you would have to be local. Now, we've got four men who know the garages very well. We've got a knife in the skip, and there's no trace of that knife ever been tested. Ever.
So all this time, they're only focusing on the young laddie, the 14-year-old boy.
Yes.
I'm right saying Mark Safrick of the FBI, an FBI profiler. He did a detailed report, and he called it a lust. It had to be a lust killer.
Yes.
And that as a 14-year-old child would be too young to be a lust killer. That's what he said.
Definitely. He's very critical. He goes further. I think I mentioned some of the criticisms of Lothian Borders Police by the FBI. It's scathing. Now, still people don't want to believe it. The FBI say it. These people say it. Forensics say it. People still know. I read it in the Daily Record. It has to be true.
Tell me about it.
No.
But the other thing was that statements changed over time, did they not? I mean, going back to the very beginning, when they went out as the search party, they all changed their statements from the reality of what Luke, that he'd gone straight. They turned around and said he went straight to where the body was. And they didn't mention it was the granny who told them to go back and have another look.
Yes, that was just sorry for everybody. Judith, John, listen, several people knew exactly where to go that night. They never ever asked why. See, the search party, they all walked down. Luke sees the dog, puts its two front paws on the wall, and sniffing the air. And what he does is he goes back on himself, climbs over the first place he comes to, it can get over the wall, and he walks down in the direction where the dog had been sniffing. And when he gets here, he was panicked. When you read the statements, he was panicked. He finds a mutilated corpse, his wee girlfriend. Now, he goes back, he shines his torch, and he sees it, and he describes it as white, and he goes back, climbs over the wall. Every one of the people that on that search party, Alice Walker Disney, because she says she was a wee bit further back. Alice Walker says that Luke Mitchell looked very scared and nervous, like he'd got a fright. Janine Jones says the same. So did Stephen Kelly. One of them says he was acting all excited and he didn't know what he was saying and he was hyperactive and at some stage he leant against the wall to save himself from falling down. They all described the dog as acting excited and jumping on the wall. 8 statements later, Luke Mitchell just walked down the path, climbed over the V, walked right there. He was emotionless. When you read these statements, now I've been trained, you get trained somewhere along the line, you read statements and you try and pick out buzzwords, like to focus on. And then, if you read these statements for 1-8, that's a completely different narrative. Luke Mitchell isn't nervous anymore. He's no white. His dog's not acted in this way. He just climbed right over the vehicle. It's like they've been nurtured. It's like they've been trained. You better see this one. Coach, that's the word. I get excited when stuff. Hey, what's back, coach? I'm not saying that happened, but that's what appears to have happened when I read these statements.
Just
a quick one about a statement. Sorry if you don't. Yeah, just one about a statement. I'll tell you. Sorry, I was approached recently. I've been approached a few times in the same nature. A young girl, traumatised. She's had to go through counselling because she was at school with Luke. And when the police spoke to her and they didn't like what she was saying, they were putting words in her mouth, bullying her. There's no other word for it. They were bullying her. She was a schoolgirl, 14. They were bullying her and harassing her. Eventually, she believed that Luke Mitchell was guilty. And she says certain things to the police that they told her roughly what to say. And all these years later, she's now a grown woman, 30s. She's been through counselling and she's in bits. Because she now knows what she says back then when she was 14 is all wrong. She was coached into saying it, bullied, pressured, call it what you want. And that's only one. Stephen Kelly, Alice Walker. Listen, the list of witnesses that have changed over time is unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Yeah. Another sort of almost unexplainable was the family of Jodie all had different phones registered to someone else, and the numbers were all mumbled and jumbled up. And the police they took the phones in, they didn't know whose phone was who, they just stuck labels on it. But they didn't actually check, because the phone, all the different text messages and phone messages, they don't tie up with the stories of their statements, do they?
No, none. It's actually bizarre to try and explain how how messed up this really is. They take phones, some phones are registered to Jodie, but Joseph uses them. Some phones were registered to Janine, but Judith used them. Judith owned phones that Jodie used. Some SIM cards were part of the package, and some were just throwaway SIMs. So by the time 5 days, I think, 5 days in, 6 days, they eventually gathered the phones up to everybody. That's people of interest, the granny, the family. But by that time, they didn't know who was using whose phone. They put them in the wrong packages and labelled them wrongly. I went back 10 days later, and the police officers, through memory, took them all out the wrong packages and put them on the right packages, but still couldn't tell you which SIM card belonged to which phone. So everybody, phone evidence that could have been vital is very vital. Very vital. In that case, if they're taking every text message sent from every one of their phones and landlines, the whole complete records, Luke Mitchell couldn't have killed that wee girl. So what they've done is very selective. They took certain text messages for what phones they wanted, attributed it to certain people, and they just disregarded the rest. It's criminal. It's genuinely criminal.
So here we'll go back to the beginning where the body, she's been murdered, the wee darling, 300 wounds.
Mm-hmm.
He's been spotted. They put the time of death at approximately 5 o'clock.
5:50.
5:50. He's spotted at 6 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
Even the prosecution have accepted. So in 45 minutes, this is a young boy of 14.
14, yes.
His mother, I take it, has no criminal associations.
No, none.
No. But in that time, they've managed to get rid of all the DNA. They've not showered he's not showered or washed. He's not changed his clothes. But somehow or other, he's got rid of all the DNA. There are no blood stains on him, no blood splatter, no signs, no bruises. But he's the sole and the prime suspect. Tell me how that works, Scott.
Listen, I genuinely can't answer that. But Roddy, I've taken people to the site, convicted murderers, robbers, people who I've represented and asked them for help. Please come take this walk with me and ask some questions to try and build up a picture of how this could happen. And that's one of the things that stick in everybody's mind. How can that be possible? 45 minutes. 45, think of that. 45 minutes. And in that time, you've got to walk 900 metres, argue with your girlfriend, then beat her in a violent struggle, pull her hair, choke her, mutilate her, stab her, cut her, strip her, get home, and be playing with your pals 45 minutes later. By the way, he's playing with his pals. He's in the woods with his pals with a tat, smoking hash, and doing what 14-year-olds are in Dalkeith. 45 minutes later, how can... And people are looking and thinking, Scott, that can't be. Have you got the times wrong? No, this is the time. And I show them where it is and show them where he had to go to. And people are, no. Listen, they just made it. You've heard that statement a few times. The Americans, they made a murderer off. Yeah. He made a murderer of a schoolboy because he believed he left Jodie's house at 5 o'clock, right? He got told that. Who told him that has never been investigated. We just know that the police put in a notepad, he left, Jodie left. We look, no, I think 5 to 5 or just before 10 to 5 were. So they had this perception that Luke Mitchell leaves Jodie's house, and then he's the only person that finds her. But it didn't happen like that. But after they had made their mind up, that was their starting point, and never ever came off of that. They just targeted them and targeted them in a vicious way. Listen, see the brother the brother never been in trouble before in his life. He never gave his brother an alibi. He just says he didn't care if he was in house. If you're covering for a murder, you come up with a better alibi. You didn't know if he was here or not.
But the other thing is, in murder, you need, apart from time, you need weapon, you need motive.
They
never came up with a motive, did they?
Do you know what the motive is? Seen you laugh. It's a 14-year-old. I've got a 14-year-old grandson, and I watch him so I can try and get a picture and a wee understanding. A 14-year-old boy, Luke Mitchell, allegedly had another girlfriend 60 miles away when he was at, say, a holiday park or a caravan park or something. He met another wee girl, 14, and they had shared a couple of phone calls or whatever. And this is a motive. Walking down that path, they had an argument with his girlfriend, so he boots her and mutilated. Come on. Then you have to be a psychological profiler to know that's
nonsense. There's a few things I'd like to cover. The other one is a thing called, and if you could explain for the viewers, when the body was examined, there's a thing called liver mortis, if I pronounced it right, liver mortis. Can you explain what that is and how it appears?
Liver mortis manifests itself in the skin like red and white dots. See, after death, your body goes a certain colour, and usually 30 to 40 minutes, liver mortis sets in, and Jodie's body was covered in liver mortis. Apart from, well, as I've explained about, there's certain pieces on Jodie's body that's remained white, which means it was pressure of some kind of pressure put on that part of the body to stop the liver settling in. And it's called liver mortis because the colour, see the red, it's like a red and white. How do you explain it? Like, I'm going to say a lighter form of the measles and some, do you know that? Right? And so our whole body's covered in that apart from certain pieces. The low midriff, just below the belly button, and 4-inch bars across the back of your calves. I think if you ever carried your child over your shoulder, you do that, the arms over the calf. So we had been drawn attention to that many times. We always thought Jodie had been moved. And, in discussions, it wasn't just me. We believed that Pressure had been put on Jodie's body across the back of her calves. This is scientifically. The back of her calves and across the lower torso of her stomach. Everywhere else was covered in liver mortis apart from these two places. No comment. Well, somebody had pressure on the back of her calf muscles and something had pressure on the lower abdomen. Within 30 or 40 minutes of death. That means somebody moved them.
Yeah. But the other two things. There was also blood, gravity-defying blood streaks.
Yes.
Again, can you explain that for the viewers?
Yeah. Well, listen, if you cut yourself here and you're standing up, the blood's going to run down the way, north to south. Gravity tells you it goes north to south. In Jodie, there's two blood runs. If you're underneath her arm, I don't want to go too much into Jodie's injuries. I feel you. From a wound under her breast, there's a blood run running towards her head. So she's been upside down. At some stage, Jodie's been upside down while she's bleeding. Now, the blood run isn't a deep, like a gush. It's a drippy blood that maybe after the wound's been dried, the blood, like you've got a wee drip. This is a drippy blood that's going south to north rather than north to south. So Jodie Jones was upside down at some stage for the blood to run like. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Another last couple of questions, if I may. There was a guy called Robert Green, a convicted rapist. He was in the area at the time. He was never questioned.
Never.
And he was also a violent rapist.
Oh, very violent and spontaneous. He wasn't like he just picked his last victim up at Roslin. Oh, he's just driving along the road and he's seen a woman. He just beat her and raped her. In the most brutal fashion. He was visiting his sister, I think, 300-400 yards away from where Jodie was killed. And he was never interviewed.
Never interviewed.
No. The boy Mark Kane. No, did you see the boy Mark Kane that I took to police? The first time he was mentioned by professionals, Dr. Ian Stevens was ridiculing Luke and his mum for being too close to each other. And I was thinking, but then somebody says to him, Mark Kane, oh, he would be a person of interest. They've never even considered him. Mark Kane, I don't want, the boy's dead now, but when I was at New Battle Abbey, a woman called Dr. Kate Smith, she's a nationalist, by the way, she's an academic, a journalist academic. She had trained this boy or educated him in some course, and she says, Scott, go and keep an eye on him at college. The boy was a nice guy, very intelligent, brilliant in music. He was disturbed. His whole upper torso was covered in real deep scarring. Self-harming. He was into music and mutilated corpses that made Luke Mitchell look like a choir boy. Now, he come to my flat next again, he had deep scratches in his face. The police asked, we're looking for someone to leave the local area who's agitated and has visible signs of being in a struggle. And I've got this man standing in front of me who fits that description. So I ask him, I'm not a shy man really, I ask him, where do you get the cuts? Where do you get the scratch in the face? Because you've just told me you're in the woods at New Battle. You're full of a cocktail of drugs. He's got a real heavy history of violence to animals. I mean, grotesque. Hanging them, burning them to death, mutilating them when they're alive. Real serious stuff. So because of it, I'm concerned, other people are phoning me and saying, Scott, is Mark Kane still in New Battle? That wee girl's dead. Because I had sort of suspicions. So I pick him up next game day and I drive him to Dalkeith Police Station and I watch him walk in the door. He walks in and they tell him they're too busy. They take his name. And on the files, inside the case files, it reads, Mark Kane, a person to be traced and questioned. They never questioned him until after Luke Mitchell was guilty. He was staying 300 yards away from the police. He's in the woods, he's got big scratches. Other people are very suspicious also. They're phoning police. I take them to police, but other people phoned the police. They never questioned him until, I think, January 2006.
3 years after the murder.
3 years after the murder, after Luke Mitchell was convicted. And then thereafter, when they questioned him, they didn't even ask him his whereabouts. All the questioning about was me. Because I'd come forward at this time, he was at university, and I'm saying, I'm not sitting, this isn't sitting right with me. And I started speaking out. They never cleared him of any involvement in the Jodie Jones murder. They never asked him where he was, any alibi. They asked him nothing. Nothing. After Luke Mitchell was killed.
He's dead now as well.
He died, I think, 2018, 2019.
Drugs. The other one is that if we go back to the lovely Daily Record, my favourite newspaper from
yes,
yours
yes,
too. Now
yes.
they did a job in this boy. We've seen it. They've done it to
Oh.
everyone. We've seen it being done to other people. But
Yes,
they
of
made
course.
him out to be some kind of sadistic Marilyn Manson, Charles Manson type hero worship because he bought
Yes,
one record, one magazine. He was having sex with his mother. He was violent. He was everything. He killed budgies. I don't know what he didn't do, but the Daily Record did a real job on him, did they not?
Repeatedly. The last time, I'm not going to say her name. I'm fed up picking on it because they were all guilty of him. The James Matthews for Sky done a job on him as well. He went in and interviewed a child member. We have to keep that in mind. This is a child. They go into a child's home and they interrogate. Listen, they were police questions. I've got 40 years' experience. James Matthews went in there, in my opinion, propped, coached by police to go in and ask questions that they could only answer under caution. And he went and done the police job for him to a boy. But the Daily Record, the Daily Record, even after murder in a small town, which is pretty decent, people say it was one-sided. Me, personally, I think it was a pretty decent, very good reporting and they've done a good job. The Daily Record next morning, instead he sit back and thinking, wait, here, we've got two detectives, 50 years experience, we've got pathologists, psychologists, QCs, forensic experts, everyone questioning his conviction. Instead he's saying, oh, here, they went and attacked everybody that was involved in the programme. They stooped so low, they sent a hack, I'm going to call her a hack, to Mark Kane's mother. The boy I've just told you about, right? She was dying of cancer, she's an old woman. And they sent a hack up to her house to remind her how bad Scott Forbes was for taking her son to the police about Jodie Jones. Then they tried to attack the two police officers were involved. Oh, listen, so they're just, and then they come with the 10 facts. I put the 10 facts in my book. The 10 facts are an absolute joke. They smeared the women. You know, I'll tell you, Roddy, I spoke to Corinne Mitchell one day last week. You hardly can understand her anymore. Her illness and life's got up there, right? And what they done to that woman is a 2003 witch trial. Now, recently we all seen the pardon witches for the 17th century. Okay, fine. Go and pardon a witch called Corinne Mitchell. She was sitting in her house in 2003. She never broke a law in her life. And they done a witch trial. They told everybody in the local village she's evil, she's wicked, she's having sex with her son, she's this. And they painted the picture of a wife, a witch and an evil son. He never stood a chance. Do you know, can I tell you how bad, Roddy? The burning of the Parker's always been he had a Parker that got burnt. She lived in a semi-detached home. The gardens are adjacent to each other, right? If you burnt anything in that garden, every tree and every plant would be covered in cinders or ash or nothing. They found nothing. The wee burner, it was for burning wee twigs and logs on the garden. The neighbours who reported this is how bad they painted the woman as a witch. The neighbours who report to the police 3-4 days after the murder, 5 days, after they've read in the paper there's only one suspect. We are not looking for anyone else. This is police feeding that to journalists. Now, we know in the political circles how that works. The Daily Record leak. And the next thing the Daily Record paint a man as a sleazy, dirty, whatever. And even irrespective of his guilt or his innocence, they just keep it up because they've got a source, and that source is in the paper that some guy leaked or some woman leaked the story to. So the police were leaking stories to their pals in the press. No other suspects. We are not looking for anyone else in the photographs of Luke Mitchell. So everybody in that area then knows Luke Mitchell was a killer. He wasn't the killer, but everybody painted that way. So the neighbours phone up and they say, well, we smelt something funny getting burnt in the garden on the night of the murder. So the police go there and they find this wee garden fire. Honestly, it's embarrassment shit. They take it away and Dobby sees all that. It brought us of interest. They search the garden for forensics or traces of fire. There's no accelerant, nothing. They find none. But read the statements of the neighbours. The tarp with the tight trousers and the knee-high boots. So reading that again, thinking, how can they say this about a woman and a murder? What had been happening? The gardens are adjacent to each other. The 15-year-old boy has been going into his bedroom and watching Corinne Mitchell through the window into the garden diagonal, sunbathing, as had the father. So the wife isn't happy at her son and her husband for spying on Corinne Mitchell sunbathing. So the husband then comes up with the tarp with the tight trousers and knee-high boots, was burning someone in the garden. And they invented this big story about a missing Parker. Parker had been burnt, and there isn't a Parker. Yeah,
I think did they not, to add a wee bit of nastiness, to call it a German army Parker? To give it a bit more nastiness.
I shouldn't laugh, but see if this wasn't such a serious thing. It's genuinely
Keystone Cops.
Real bad stuff. Real bad stuff. Listen, see if Craig Dobie had it. He's an older man now, he's retired. Some of the people in that team must have some kind of conscience.
I don't think so.
I'm the same, Roddy, but you can only hope.
Well, there's two other things I'd like to cover before we wrap this one up, for me. Now, although it's not admissible in a UK court or Scottish court or anywhere outside the United States, both Luke Mitchell and his mother took a polygraph.
Yes.
And he was asked, did you kill Jodie? No. I don't know what other questions was he asked, because he passed this polygraph.
He passed it with flying colours. It was in Shorts prison, and the only criticism people used, he kept his eyes closed. See, in Shorts prison, the petitions where you visit clients are all glass. So when I'm sitting here with my client in front of me, next door in this cubicle here, next door here, there's other criminals. Prison officers can look in. And there was a prison officer making smart faces. So Terry Mullins, a gentleman here, a man of real integrity, I must tell you that. Terry Mullins, he told Luke Mitchell to close his eyes. Right? And the questions, if I remember, I'm going off my mind here, somebody will pull me for this. Did you kill Jodie? Did you stab Jodie? And do you know who did? No. No untowards whatsoever. Passed with flying colours. His mother, did you lie for your son? Did you help give an alibi and did you help cover up a murder? No deception. No deception. Now I know they are permissible somewhere. The parole board use them for sex offenders. If a sex offender says he's never been near a swing park and it goes beep, 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 saying he has been near the swing park, they can return them. They can be used, although in the Scottish Criminal Case Review Commission, they don't accept them as evidence, but they pay attention to them. They take some regard from them. They can't use them and write up and say, you say you passed a lie. However, they are used. And quite extraordinary. A mother and a son can answer these 6 questions, basic questions related to this crime, and both pass. Both.
But yeah, and I'll come back to the polygraph in a minute. But the last thing I want to cover is Jodie's brother.
Yes.
Who was never again a suspect.
No.
He had, it's fair to say, severe mental health issues.
Yes.
And he reacted badly to, because the thing is, the cannabis isn't the same as when I was a lad. But the cannabis, he had psychotic episodes when he indulged in cannabis. He was sectioned a few times.
Yes, very violent, paranoid with cannabis abuse. Now, he wasn't smoking a joint, Roddy. He was smoking what you call a bucket bong.
A bong, yeah.
A bucket bong is where a 2-litre bolt of coke with water, the water full of, you put all the hash in the bucket, and so you're taking it, it's blowing your brains. If he's been smoking in for 3 days prior to Jodie's death, 5 weeks, 5 weeks before Jodie was murdered, Joseph was sectioned under the Mental Health Act, and he was being jagged, forcefully injected with the maximum amount of antipsychotic drugs that the law permits. They don't want him to go home because they say when he goes home to his house, his mum's psychotic. They all smoke cannabis, raised in the house, there's drink abuse, and it's not a good environment for Joseph. Right? His mother lies constantly. She's open in her statement. She's open when the psychiatrists visit the home to see Joseph to check on him. She tells lies, normal lies to them. He's not well today, or he's away there, or away. He's upstairs smoking hash, and he's not meant to do that, and they can section him again. So rather than tell the truth, she tells lies constantly to the medical team. On the day Jodie was murdered, the medical team were meant to visit him, and his mother phoned him and cancelled the appointment with her usual excuse. Now that's 5 weeks after it. The drugs were starting to wear off. He was taking cannabis resin in excessive amounts. The paranoia's increasing. He's walking about the streets with a big blade like that and a rucksack. People were terrified of him. He was at people's doors, pulled that and showed them, I'll do this. He's told people, I'll repeat this, and I'm open to anybody to challenge me. He told people, I'll do to you what I did to my sister. He's a real heavy psychotic person. Now, when he got released 5 weeks before Jodie was murdered, the cannabis starts kicking in, the drugs wear off. At the time Jodie's murdered, he's psychotic. His mother says he's had marvellous breakthroughs. They broke medical science that weekend in Dalkeith. And it's amazing. The miracles that happened that weekend is astonishing. And the police just accepted this. Oh, this man who's psychotic, can't leave the house without a big blade. All of a sudden is this peaceful. But when he comes after Jodie's murder, he goes away for 5 days. Mental health. He comes back after 5 days, he's still a vulnerable witness. So every time he's getting questioned by the police, he's sitting there with his mother or a responsible adult to answer the questions for him. And he's not smoking. And they never ever looked at his background.
They never gave Luke Mitchell a responsible adult when they were questioning him.
No, none. And then when it comes to the trial, Joseph Jones, before the first trial, those 2 trials, he got postponed and then again. Twice he sectioned himself. Put himself under the Mental Health Act. He doesn't have to go
to court. So he didn't have to appear as a witness?
Doesn't have to appear as a witness.
Well, we don't have a Fifth Amendment in Scotland. Probably that was why. Maybe.
So ask yourself, Roddy, you're an educated man. And I'll ask all this. If Joseph Jones was taken into court on that time and everybody knew about the psychosis, by the way, the violence is extreme. Headbutting lampposts, punching them, his face is busting, he's still headbutting lampposts in psychotic episodes. So we've got a real man who's frenzied. We've got a frenzied murder, and you take him in the court and you explain all the medical records, how soon it was before it, blah, blah, blah. Would that have created a reasonable doubt against Luke Mitchell? Me personally, there should have been a reasonable doubt. Yeah. But that would have created.
You said he was taken in 5 weeks previously. Was that not, am I right in saying, because he had a psychotic episode, attacked Jodie, his mother, and everyone in the house?
Yes. Up in I think it was Alice Walker, I may be wrong, it was Alice Walker or Yvonne Walker's house. And when the police asked him about it, he says, I think I pushed her. Now, my recollection or my understanding of Joseph Jones is there's no push. Joseph Jones, when he was younger, listen, they tell me now he's a much more calmer man, he walks the hills and stuff. But we're talking 17 years ago. He was psychotic. He was a very violent, psychotic man who acted on impulses. He was frenzied in his nature. And you've got a frenzied murder sitting next door to you. You've got a man following her 15 minutes before she's dead. And they never once looked at him as a suspect. Right? Never once. Eh?
He was also into poaching and killing animals and.
Listen, he talked. Yes, I must tell you, he was a torturer of animals. And I've looked into this. I knew the circles. As I say, some people would shoot the deer and they got it. Listen, they butcher it, and it'll never be my thing. People butcher it without a care. He would butcher it when it was alive and stuff. You know, he was a sadistic man. They say when Joseph was 15, his dad committed suicide, and all his school friends tell you the boy changed. Understandably so. I'm no. Listen, if your father kills himself, a traumatic experience, and you're like, people say he changed dramatically for the age of 15 when that happened. He was only like 20 when this happened. Now he's changed dramatically again. He's quite a loner. He goes in the house and walks the dogs. He still goes poaching dogs, you know, like he still goes lamping for foxes and deers and stuff. And he's been pretty quiet, violent towards other people. But so would I be if I had 20 years fully what they were dragging him. Oh, these antipsychotic drugs I've seen over the years, they turn people into robots. So what's the difference? That's the only question I've asked. So,
19 years on, young Luke Mitchell, now in his 30s, stuck in jail. He's due for possible parole in the 20-year mark. But he's not going to get it because you have to accept your guilt, admit your guilt, and he's not going to do that because, as his polygraph showed, he's refusing to accept a crime that he didn't commit.
Yes.
We need something to happen. But the polygraph that he passed and his mother passed, you have offered for all the people that were involved, the Dickies, the Joseph, the brother, to come and you will pay for them to have a polygraph. Yes. Has anyone taken you up on that offer?
No.
Roddy, some people stay?
Oh, that offer will stay for as long as you want. But believe it, listen, see, I've never written a book before. And I knew this would be controversial and there would be attacks. You've seen them. I've got a couple of stalkers who are real bad people. But anyway, some people have been really kind to me on this. People have phoned me and I'll just tell you right now, a person donated money to me yesterday. Quite a large sum of money, by the way. 4 figures. I'll say that it's into 1,000, past 2,000, towards the polygraph test. People would like to see this brought to a head. So that money will always be put aside. If Joseph Jones, John Ferris, Gordon or David Dickey don't think what I'm saying is lies, take a polygraph test, and if they pass it, make public apologies, and I'll compensate them. I'll admit my guilt in any civil court, or I'll put my hands up, and whatever has to happen to me, I'll take it. But I know that's not going to happen. What I've told in my book, Roddy, I'll take an oath. What I've put in here, I put my name in it. I've been brave enough, the word brave. I'll put my name in this. I gave a sworn affidavit in 2005 to a solicitor advocate, Robbie Burnett, only because I'm a very, very respectable man and I knew I was going into bad waters. I went to him and I asked him, Robbie, do me an affidavit. So I stand by my affidavit in 2005, word for word, what I says about Mark Kane and my involvement. And I take an oath on that book. And so any of these men want to come and prove me a liar, please come, I'll pay for you. I'll bring Terry Mullins back up from down south. He meets you at the airport. We'll set up a room in a hotel in the airport, and I'll pay for any polygraph test that any of the people I've mentioned in my book want to take.
Can't be fair enough. You'll see there, folks, running along the bottom is a ticker with the name of the book, available at Amazon. A Long Walk to Justice. Before we go, Scott, is there anything we haven't covered today you would like the viewers to hear that I haven't maybe covered or asked you?
There's a couple of things. Burning of the clothes. We spoke about Luke Mitchell's mother getting accused of burning a Parker coat. Never been a trace it, no accelerant, nothing in the garden. So there wasn't a burnt coat. There's nothing. There's no evidence to suggest that, right? On the night of the murder, John Ferris, one of the moped boys, his mother, Catherine, and his half-sister and alleged partner, Yvonne Walker, were caught burning clothes on a piece of waste ground at Stone Place in Mayfield and Dalkeith. Now, Stone Place is where every one of these people involved in this case used as a gang hut. Alice Walker lived at Stone Place. That's the grandmother. Everybody frequented there. She's a matriarch of the whole family. Everybody went to that home. Yards away is Yvonne Walker's home, where Joseph Jones goes, David Dickey, Gordon Dickey, Ferris. They all go there to smoke hash, drink. Jodie goes there. The sister goes there. It's a gang hut. For want of a better word, it's when you're 20, everybody goes. One of your pals has got a house that everybody goes to this. So 2 people were connected to John Ferris are seen burning clothes, and I can say seen. I've got several names that reported this. I'm not trying to be smart here. I can back in and I say up. Several people report these women burning clothes. Do you know what the police say about the burning of the clothes? It was in the wrong area. It was in the wrong area. The burning clothes, the relatives, who people are at a murder scene, it was at the wrong. Now it goes even further. In the burning of these clothes, they found children's clothes. Yvonne Walker had a young child. But they also found cable ties. So, right? Yeah. Now, what cable ties was there is Jodie was tied up and maybe strangled, but nobody knows what she was strangled with. A cable tie could also have come from the moped, but it was in the wrong place. When people reported relatives, the suspects burning clothes. On the night the clothes were burnt, they took the moped to the local scrappy. The local scrapyard knows the bike went there. Everybody in the area knows. So that the night of Jodie's murder, people were cutting her hair. John Ferris was cutting his hair so not to look like the Stocky Man. Now that was before the Stocky Man was even brought into the equation. He was cutting his hair not to look like him. He didn't want to be mistaken for Joseph Jones. He's cutting his own hair. Think of that. He's burning clothes and they're getting rid of mopeds. They found a pair of black gloves used to drive the moped stuck at the back of a heater, but they'd been submerged in water for days. And that was in Yvonne Walker's house. And none of this was ever followed up, traced, investigated, or nothing. All they were interested in for every one of these suspects was, did you ever buy hash for Luke Mitchell?
And he wasn't a drug dealer. He wasn't a drug dealer.
Listen, we've all grew up. Luke Mitchell was 14. Middle class background. well, family business. They had a thriving family business when I met them. The business got torched and vandalised on a daily basis, and the family got terrorised. When I met them, it was a thriving business, nice family, and they're going to John Ferris, who him and his mum are selling hash to each other, and they're asking John Ferris how many times did he buy hash off of Luke Mitchell? David Dickey, Gordon Dickey, what about that with Luke Mitchell? I had a fascination for knives. I've got 2 knives from my house. Does that mean I have a fascination? They spun everything. No, they want to Luke Mitchell.
What's the future for Luke? What can happen to release him from this hell?
Yeah. We're on three things. We need the media. We need the media. The media convicted Luke Mitchell, and in my opinion, the media can help free him, put pressure on people. I hope Roddy Dunlop's listening. He showed an interest. Joanna Cherry likes justice. This is the biggest miscarriage of justice in Scottish legal history, and politicians didn't care. This is on our back. This is on our front doorstep. This is in Scotland. This is a wee child, a 14-year-old boy, taken from his house. I have to say this again, without a shred of evidence, made a murder of it. He had no human rights, he had no child rights, nothing. So we need people to start paying attention and maybe speaking up and looking a wee bit further.
Start writing to your members of parliament, folks.
Yes. Or your MSPs and
your MSPs, your police board people.
We've tried it for years with the Labour Party. Dal Keith, my dad's for there, he's a psychic minor. David Hamilton, Sir David Hamilton, was his friend, and I'll not tell you what I think he's Sir David Hamilton. We approached him over the years and other MPs for Dal Keith, but they were scared to because of the local feeling. So this is where we are on. We've got a couple of options. See what we've just told you about the brother's mental health. That was never put before a court. So we think that's fresh evidence, although there's an argument against it because it was in the files of the defence team who never read it. But there's still an argument that could be, if the jury knew about this, would have changed their mind. In my opinion, without a shadow of a doubt. So we've got that. But we've also got forensic experts who are in the process, we believe, of writing preliminary reports to the Crown. They ask them to access all samples that were taken for the crime scene. Now, people think that's easy. You just write a letter to the Crown and the Crown will hand them over. Oh, it takes you years. They don't want to give you it because they say the crime's solved and you're just doing a fishing expedition trying to find whatever you can. But because the letters are specific towards certain samples, it's very possible that could happen, but we have to pray it happens. And we believe for consultations that if these samples are tested again, there'll be definitive proof who killed Jodie Jones. Now, the person pushing for this most is Luke Mitchell. Because when I first read the proposals, I thought, oh, this could come back. Look, 20 years DNA examination has improved massively since 2003. I think when I first looked, it was 10 bars, now it's 20 bars, and they can pinpoint certain things they couldn't years ago. So we're now, that's the 2 avenues in law that we're trying to look at now to try and get this boy free. Look, we must free him. This is, genuinely, I can't emphasise this. This is the worst. This is a boy, he was a child. I thought, imagine sitting, a 14-year-old child, you're sitting there with your mum, you're never in trouble before in your life. The only crime he committed, he went looking for his girlfriend when all the males in the Jones family, didn't they? They were 50 metres away from the path, and they expected people to come from 3 miles away and walk down the path, and they're sitting in the house not caring. Why? Where was Joseph Jones when Jodie was getting killed? Nobody knows. There's no alibi. Alan Ovens, his stepfather, he didn't go looking for her. The only male person that went, apart from Kelly, he went with his girlfriend. The only person, Luke Mitchell, went out with his dog looking. The only time he went, he cared enough to go looking for Jodie Jones. And if the granny hadn't said go back down there, would have even found her that night.
Yeah. It's terrible.
I mean,
Scott, this hour and a half has passed in a flash, my friend.
Oh, listen, Roddy, I can't thank you enough. As I say, we need to put this message, to me, is the most important.
Well, I hope anyone who's watching this will share it. And it doesn't matter where you are in the globe, share it. The more people that hear about this terrible travesty against a child who's already spent 19 years in prison for a crime he didn't commit.
I didn't, Roddy.
So
He didn't, pal.
please share it.
Thank you.
And if any of you have anything you think could assist or help Scott in his endeavours to get Luke Mitchell out, please get in touch. You know where to get me, but get in touch.
Thank you, Roddy. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott.
No, generally, listen, this is the only way we can. You've got a political forum. Listen, politics, Joanna Cherry, listen, Joanna, Tommy Sheridan. Listen, I've contacted everybody and everybody. Everybody has to know this case. It'd be a shame in 10 years' time Luke Mitchell got freed and we speak about like a history lesson about how Scottish society, think about this, the whole Scottish society stood back and allowed a wee boy. Do you remember watching the old Cowboys years ago when they got a lynch mob and you had somebody point a finger and they just pointed at anybody, it was him. That's what they done to Luke Mitchell.
Yeah.
He was a child.
A metaphoric lynch.
Child, the police bullied them, interrogated them, no witnesses, no lawyers. Please.
Yeah. Till I see you again, folks, take care.